look, in terms of where Israel and Iran are right now, we've had, wars of words. We've got the Ayatollah Khamenei talking about, the usual, people will regret this. We've got Donald Trump talking about we know where where the Ayatollah is, but we're not going to assassinate him. Well, not yet anyway. Possibility of America getting drawn into the war. Do you think America will get drawn into the war? And would that be a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, it's the quickest way to end the war is to have the Americans actually be in the war, because the Americans could end it very quickly given the ordnance they could bring to bear. The Americans could destroy the Iranian nuclear program very quickly. They could then, if they wanted to, push on to regime change very quickly. It is really American weaponry that would make the key difference. Now, whether they will or not is another matter. But I think the intelligence estimates that the president will be getting will be telling him the regime is close to cracking.
Yeah.
So, if you can give them a push, you will succeed in doing something that no American president has managed for 45 years, which is get control over the Iranian agenda.
The difficulty Donald Trump has, of course, is there's a very big difference between sending American jets to protect Israel when the mullahs or Hezbollah send a load of missiles into Israel and a defensive of an ally. It's very different when it becomes an offensive one. Now, I would certainly argue, and I'm probably sure you would as well, and I think anyone who's paid attention, this was a preemptive defensive strike by Israel, given that Iran has been clearly trying to build a nuclear weapon and has made it very clear they would like to deploy that nuclear weapon to destroy Israel. So, I'm not quite sure why people think that this is an out-of-the-blue attack from Israel. However, Donald Trump was got elected, as indeed every president in America is elected, on this sort of American-first isolationist view. I'm going to get America out of wars, not get us dragged into more wars in the Middle East or get us out of Ukraine, etc., etc. Would this be going against probably an awful lot of what his sort of MAGA constituency want, wouldn't it?
Well, it would go against some of what they want, but I can assure you, Julia, that after 45 years of hostility to America from Iran, that most Americans are very happy to have a situation where Iran finally gets its just desserts. This is a regime, don't forget, that every Friday burns American flags.
Yeah.
It shouts death to Satan. It shouts death to America. This is not a usual situation, really. So from this perspective, I think it is actually going to be a popular move if Iran's got their just desserts, as you said, for the right reason, which is, of course, on nuclear, front in that way, that they've gone in because they were about to build that nuclear weapon. And that gives the Americans also a right, given part of the international community, to deal with this and to resolve this in a very successful way. So I think for all the opposition that has been felt at various times in the MAGA movement to this, there'll also be people who say, the way to make America great again is easy victories, which this would be, since Israelis have dealt with them already for you, and then you pick up the prize at the end, which is a transformed Middle East. It's the actual antithesis to previous American interventions, which were very costly. This will be very cheap, and it'll be very effective and very quick. So I think actually there'll be people in the MAGA camp who recognise that and come on side.
And I suppose you say a clear aim, because, to a certain extent, the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, it was, OK, we're going to, topple, the Taliban in Afghanistan. We're going to topple Saddam Hussein. But then what? And Iran is very different. It's a much, much bigger state. It's a much more developed state. But there is also that opposition, a sort of a less, is not an Islamist extremist opposition. They're the ones who've been in power all the time. There's an opposition kind of in waiting, wanting to take over and could actually keep that country together. That would be the hope. But there's always going to be the concern after what happened in Iraq, what happened in Afghanistan, what happened in Libya and elsewhere after the Arab Spring, that actually be careful what you wish for when a despot of any kind, or these regimes, when they are deposed, that you may end up with something worse.
All that is true, Julia, and yet this regime is the worst regime you could have in Iran. It already is the most extreme form of Shia religious fundamentalism that you could find. It already supports terrorism around the neighborhood and around the world. It already has been trying to build nuclear weapons. It's kind of difficult to imagine what could possibly be worse than this. In fact, almost all options would be better than this. And this is why it's different to, say, Iraq. It's why it's different to, say, other areas in the Middle East. This is the worst regime. It's already in power. It's already been put into power and into place that way. And the best outcome here would be to remove this regime, because not only would it give Iranians a better future, it would stop any progress towards nuclear weapons there, and it would make the region transformed into a positive place for once.
And in terms of the reactions of other Middle Eastern countries, there's some sort of condemnation, because a lot of leaders go through the motions really to appease the people on their own streets. But will they all be quite secretly going, oh, thank goodness Israel's acted and sorted out Iran?
Yeah, well, I think you saw that with the reaction of Friedrich Merz yesterday, the German Chancellor. He said Israel's done the world a favour. The dirty work, the world's dirty work has been done by Israel here. So, of course, there is a moment which everyone in the region recognises. The Saudis said yesterday, Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. If they were to have one, we would have one. Yeah. Well, read between the lines. That tells you everything you need to know.
Yeah, indeed. And what do you make of the protests here? And we've seen, I mean, again, I think the absurdity of protests, which have gone far from being supporting Palestinian people in Gaza to being effectively pro-Hamas and anti-Israel, let's face it, anti-Semitic on lots of occasions, demonstrations here and in America in particular as well, to some protesters, some campaigners and demonstrators literally flying the flag of Iran and talking about defending Iran and the Iranian regime. Often these people being from the left, supposedly thinking that a regime that beats and murders young women for not wearing a head covering and the like, and thinking that they in some way are allies, along with Hamas and their treatment of their civilian population and particularly of women. Well, what do you make of people, so many people in the West, particularly on the left, being supportive of some of the most heinous regimes with which they have the least in common? What do you make of that?
Well, what it tells you is that those people's priorities are backwards, basically. These aren't the people who are supporting human rights. These aren't the people who are helping free people. They are the oppressors. And what is happening here is an inversion of moral authority. And the people who are marching for Iran, who've been marching, as you say, in support of Hamas, are people who wish us to be destroyed as well in the West. And that's the sad reality. They hate ourselves, therefore they hate those, or they support those who hate us too. And that's becoming clearer and clearer as we see the sort of turning of the clock. And I guarantee you tomorrow, if another evil regime were to take on the West, they would be supporting that regime as well. It's all a continuum.
It's an anti-West, anti-Western values issue. Now, let's talk about values and culture, because it's something we're talking to you about international affairs right now, but something you and I have discussed on a number of occasions, the work of the Henry Jackson Society tackling extremism, radicalisation in this country. But what do you make of so many people, I mean, on the left in this country? I mean, I would say they were the first ones to politicise the issue of the grooming gangs by basically saying, oh, let's not investigate because the perpetrators appeared to be Pakistani Muslim men, and that will damage community cohesion. There's no doubt at all there has been a far-right bandwagon, but the people speaking out saying we need a national inquiry and people saying this should stop and these people should be prosecuted, absolutely not on a far-right or any other kind of bandwagon, just calling for right justice to be done. But Alan Mendoza, I mean, in terms of those who would argue that this is in some ways somehow a cultural issue, a community cohesion issue, rather than a simple matter of criminality, what do you make of that argument?
Well, I think the evidence that Baroness Casey has already turned up suggests that there is a cultural problem here. There is a social cohesion issue. It's not simply a criminality issue when you have a disproportionate number of a small minority of Pakistani men involved in this crime. So she herself has said, we need to understand this more. We need to understand what the cultural drivers are. The government belatedly has woken up to this as well and said, we too have sort of decided that there might be some mileage in this cultural argument in this debate. And so as a result, what we're seeing is that the cultural sociological points are coming to the fore. They always should have done, since anyone with eyes and a brain could have worked out there was a cultural and social problem here in terms of what was going on. So I think it's great we've got the evidence, as it were, to support these contentions now as well.
But wait a second, but we had the evidence already. It's just now Baroness Casey, a Labour peer, has said it. Now it's OK for everyone to say it. But before that, you were a bigot for saying it.
Oh, totally. And that was a far-right bandwagon nonsense argument. The argument was here that, of course, she's saying it now, therefore it's OK. But the reality is, you codify this and you do. I think we did learn some things from the audit, apart from the horror of the crimes. I think we learned that there was insufficient data collected, that police forces actually did not record the ethnicity and religion on purpose. So I think we did learn something from that audit, which we suspected beforehand, but now we could actually point was true. And I think that's part of, you know, the joy of having audits like this, is that you actually discover more of the truth. And when we do the national inquiry, we'll discover even more of the truth because of it. And that's why it's so important to have one.
Indeed. Dr. Alan Mendoza, always good to talk to you, Executive Director of the Henry Jackson Society. Thank you very much for that. Claire Pissell, it is fascinating how much international politics and national politics are colliding at the moment in terms of these sort of cultural discussions, these values discussions, these whose side are you on discussions.
And it's not a difficult place to be. You should know who you believe, who you trust, who you want to put your allyship with. And I can't understand why some people find this so fundamentally difficult.
I think that I'm on the side of the girls who've been raped. I don't care who raped them. I want whoever they are to be prosecuted. I wouldn't go after them because they're Pakistani or Muslim.
No,
I go after them because they raped a girl in the same way I would go after a white man who was an atheist. I think it's very strange. In the same way, when you look at international affairs, whether it's been Hamas and Israel or Iran and Israel, I'm on the side of the democracy. I stand with Israel. I mean, for which I've had at least 5,000 messages telling me I'm a baby killer in the last weekend. But I mean, that's just par for the course now.
That's just Tuesday.
That's just Tuesday. But you know, I mean, I'm not carrying in a bomb shelter, but nevertheless, I still think it's important for people to say it out loud.
It is, and when you start to see people on the streets of the United Kingdom supporting a terrorist organisation
and the theocratic horrible government.
Absolutely, and now the Ayatollah and his regime, you sort of think, who are you and what are you doing?
I think, you know, my thing is I think they are properly stupid and properly mad, and I think stupidity and madness are really bad combinations.
Please don't have children. Please don't have
Please
children.
do not contribute to the gene pool and lower our average IQ. And I don't think that people have different opinions from me on lots of other things, but on certain key issues, I genuinely find also they know no facts. As a general rule, try not to form an opinion on something if you don't know any facts.
And when you point that out to them and say, why don't you go and read a little bit about it, they accuse you of being biased. And you think, well, no, I'm telling you to go.
Again, I have no unconscious bias. My biases are all very conscious because I have a bias and an opinion on things once I know enough about them.
Precisely.